It's one small step for man.
What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an
Hi, this is John Cohen. Welcome to another episode of Webb of Deception. I'm joined again in this episode by Jason Goodman. Jason, thanks for joining me once again on the show.
Thanks for having me, John. Good to be back.
The reaction to the first show that we did was pretty wild. We got a lot of views and a tremendous number of comments. People were kind of recounting and saying, hey, I remember that. I remember when you and Trish went on the plane, and I remember this and I remember that. And I'm reading all these comments and I'm saying, again, to me, this is all fascinating because I didn't live any of this.
Right.
This is all new to me. So I thought it might be fun to go back to the episode that I published on, I think I published it on the Johnny Hoover channel. And those comments I want to take a look at because I was looking at them and they were some real meaningful comments there. So if you go to the Web of Deception episode 1 and maybe sort those comments by top or whatever, top comments, and we'll see what people had to say here. And
Ooh, a lot of replies.
So let's take a look at some of these comments here. So I watched most of all the videos with Jason and George every day. I really liked them, was very intrigued. I was very sad when they split up. Woo-hoo. And then Camp says, me too. Day 23, I don't know what that is. George and his brother have continued to pursue me for the past 6.5 years. We didn't split up.
No, I wrote that. This is definitely not
Or-
CSTT, the new
Definitely
crowdsource the truth channel.
Well, that's your alter ego. This is your alter ego. This is the Dark Superman. This isn't really you. This is that other one, right?
Yeah. I was interested to see these comments too, because I mean, again, everybody's got kind of like a keyhole perception of looking through the lens of YouTube and seeing what was going on. And it was a fun show. We did get into a lot of, really unique adventures. And the thing is, John, you got to remember, live streaming was pretty new at that time. We were looking when YouTube kind of activated, and it was like 2014, depending on, it was really only going wide in 2016, 17. So in terms of the evolution of broadcast technology, and this really fascinates me, you go look at Milton Berle or whatever, and there was a certain way they did that show. And you look at news broadcasts from the 50s and 60s, and then shows into the 80s and 90s. And then, we had reality TV as high definition cameras got smaller and cheaper, and cable stations proliferated and you needed more shows. But live streaming, and what George and I were doing, it was, Lionel even said it was like a cross between investigative journalism, reality TV, and social media. And it really was. It was a unique thing. I mean, that I think is the aspect that people enjoyed from like a television entertainment kind of a standpoint. And it was interesting. We were going all over the country, getting into these, real-time events, going to court when Imran Awan was there. It was exciting. But
don't jump ahead. That's episode 3, 4, and 7. So
right.
we gotta pace ourselves here. All right. Well, let's keep reading these comments.
But just to finish that thought, the part that people didn't get was that it wasn't like we were two friends who had an argument and split up. I realized that he and his brother were trying to set me up to get me arrested by the FBI and the Port of Charleston, and now have been suing me for 6.5 years. And there's a lot more to it than maybe some people realize.
Exactly. And that's why we're doing a series on it, because that's exactly the point. It ends up in some serious water. I mean, you're talking about, when we talk about Imran Awan, we're talking about the Hillary Clinton emails, and we're talking about WikiLeaks and the servers and BleachBit and all this stuff. So this gets deep and intense, but without the backstory, nobody understands how the hell you end up in a backyard with a shed. So that's why we have to understand, how the hell, like, I'm still wondering, who's this Eric Braverman, head of Clinton Foundation? And there was a thumb drive and WikiLeaks, and you guys, so we got a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah.
Well, before we get to Imran Awan, we haven't covered, we don't know enough yet about your trip over to England with Eric Braverman. We don't yet know enough about the thumb drive that was involved with that. We don't know enough about the Peter Smith and Shane Harris characters yet. So that was what I was thinking was going to be sort of the foundation for this show.
No way. That's like 3-4 shows. Let's start with Braverman.
Right.
Let's start at the beginning. Because
so that's the beginning. That makes sense.
Yeah. And for people who want to follow with this, the best way to get these old videos is on Odyssey. Okay. Yeah. So, the way to do it is if you go to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, you got all these tabs up here. If you click on content, this thing that looks like sliders or switches or something, that allows you to do a detailed search. And all you have to do is just switch this from newest first to oldest first. And what it's going to do now is give you all of the original Crowdsource the Truth videos. These are some of the first videos I did. And you're going to get some of these videos with George and stuff about Imran Awan here. So this is the first video we looked at it last time with George. And he mentions to me in this conversation, Eric Braverman. And at this time, Eric Braverman had been the CEO of the Clinton Foundation. And George says to me approximately that he read about Eric Braverman in True Pundit, which I had never heard of before George mentioned it here, but he read about it in True Pundit, and that Braverman had left the Clinton Foundation and gone to the Russian embassy or something, and now he's missing, and George had created, give him credit. He created this whole exciting mystery of where is Eric Braverman. So from the standpoint of like taking an obscure news story that was a valid story and making it kind of his story or getting it to go viral and getting people interested in it as a YouTube journalist, that was intriguing how he did that. And also, I was just interested in getting to the bottom of any kind of, Clinton crime mystery. So, we were talking about that. And so Eric Braverman, he left the Clinton Foundation and he went into hiding. We had no idea where he was for months. And he did just this whole series of where is Eric Braverman? And so we had Trish and I going to England. So we found out that Eric Braverman was going to be speaking at this event at the Blavatnik School of Government. And we went there. And they came and kicked us out because one of the social engineers who was directly associated with George and his brother, a guy by the name of Manuel Chavez, who, he's left the picture basically, stopped agitating, and I'm fine having that relationship with him. I don't want to stoke any kind of, let sleeping dogs lie, but just going over the facts. It was him. Right. He made a video claiming that he had contacted his friends at Oxford to, thwart the trip. And sure enough, when we went in there, we were waiting to speak to Eric Braverman, and he did walk in the room. It was exciting because George for months and months was saying, where is Eric Braverman? And, put the money together, got on a plane, flew to England, and here he was. He walked into the conference room. I had a little pen, hidden video recorder and a pen, and it was like, boom, there is Eric Braverman. It was pretty good payoff to what George had built for months and months and months, as far as where this guy was. Now, the thing that was quite strange about this Blavatnik School of Government meeting with Eric Braverman is that they posted the speech, right? Here, I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
It's,
What is
I
he
think,
doing in as he's speaking here? What capacity? So he's no longer the head of the Clinton Foundation. So what capacity is he now? Is he a professor? Is he doing a book
he's a
tour?
professor at Yale. Yes, he's a
Okay.
law professor at Yale, and people can listen to this whole thing. It's public sector deep dive, a new set of public sector values. So
That's
here he is.
McKinsey. Whoa,
This is him.
Go back. Whoa.
Yeah.
Jump
Oh,
back.
yeah,
Jump
McKinsey,
back.
all that.
Yeah. Slow down, Tiger. All right. So we've got McKinsey and Oxford, and what's the one in the middle?
Blavatnik School of Government, which is some part of Oxford or something.
I got
So they're having this conference. Trish and I go to this conference. Braverman is a speaker. We go to this session. And the thing that's interesting is, you listen to what they're saying here. They're talking about how in these remote countries where they need to help people, they want to be creative and use crowdsourcing essentially and cell phones to take pictures of disasters and come up with new ways that they can react to that. And he just said certain things that caused me to believe that he knew I was there, that he knew what crowdsource the truth was. And the other thing that caused me to think that is when this ended, I mean, you know what this type of session is like, John. This is not the Consumer Electronics Show. You can tell by the tight cropped shot and how close the people in the front row are. This was like a 35-person room. This is a breakout session at a moderately sized government conference. This was not 40,000 people in a convention center in Las Vegas. This was something happening on a school campus in some government building, and we were in some class lecture room. And so, like, the way it usually happens at these types of things is the people who are interested and are there will speak to these people and ask them a question or say hello or whatever. And when I attempted to do that with Eric Braverman, I've never seen a security response like this anywhere before in my life. First, so he's a pretty slight guy, but I would say he's about 6 foot or 6'1". So there was a guy about my height, but an Asian guy in a suit. And you know what I'm talking about when there's a short Asian guy in a suit. You're like, what is this guy doing? Walking with Braverman, talking on a cell phone. And then when they got right up to me, he handed the cell phone to Braverman, who switched it into the hand facing me so that the cell phone is blocking his ear so he can pretend to not hear what I'm saying. Then the Asian guy, like lacrosse style, set a pick where he moved in front of me and then stopped so that I would not be able to advance toward where Braverman was. But he was being subtle, He didn't grab me. He just stood there and stopped to block me in the crowd. And I went around him and accelerated towards Braverman, went out into the hallway, over to the elevator, where like a beef eater, like bald, stocky British security guy wearing an Oxford shirt physically grabbed me like this with 2 meat hook hands on the sides of my arm, like shoulders, and physically restrained me from entering the elevator that Eric Braverman walked into. I wasn't running down the hall screaming or anything. I was just walking into an elevator and they grabbed me. Someone did not want me speaking to Eric Braverman, and I've never had opportunity to speak to him before. I've called him and tried him many times. One time he answered the phone and I said, Mr. Braverman, and he said, hello, 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 like he couldn't hear me, then hung up. Then I called back and he didn't answer. So he doesn't want to talk to me.
Where's Trish? Where's Trish while all this is happening? Where's
sitting right next to me.
Okay. And as this guy puts his hands on you, she's like 2 steps behind you?
Oh, she didn't keep up. I mean, that's the blast out into the hallway. She's jammed up in the people. That was a 30 seconds at the end before they and then, the guy's grabbing me and she comes out into the hallway and sees me being grabbed and the doors close and she gets what's going on, but she wasn't so much in that mix. What I just found out right here is only 2 months ago, he's left Schmidt Futures. He was the CEO of Eric Schmidt's thing.
Oh, man. Eric and Wendy Schmidt. What an interesting couple they are. Let's hang on here. Wait. I need to test my understanding of something that you said. You said that Manuel Chavez made a video laying claim to the fact that he called ahead to Oxford to warn somebody that you, as an agent working with George Webb, were on your way to disrupt? Like, is that?
Yeah, that somehow we were going to disrupt the conference and harm Eric Braverman and we shouldn't be allowed in.
And he admits to this. He made a video laying claim to this.
I probably have the video, years ago.
Right.
I mean, I'm not interested in doing anything with him from a lawsuit standpoint, so I don't even look at that evidence
I'm just
anymore.
checking, making sure I understand.
That guy came to this apartment building one time, showed the building, said this is where Goodman lives. The comments were saying, dox that Jew, kill that Jew. These guys did crazy stuff to try to, bug me. And by the way, George's brother has a new lawsuit against me. We probably spoke about it last time. There's going to be a hearing next week. They're not giving up.
No. All right. So let's talk about this for a second. So now Eric Braverman, the former head of the Clinton Foundation, which we now know from Charles's work, doesn't seem to have like all the right paperwork. Would that be a good synopsis as far as how would you? Well,
it's completely defective in how it's formed, because the Clinton Foundation, when you get tax exempt status from the IRS, you can't just tell them, hey, I'm a really nice guy and I'm going to collect money from people and do good things with it, so let me be tax exempt. You have to have a clear purpose, like we're the American Heart Association and we're going to, research cardio, whatever, Cancer Society, going to collect money and give it to this hospital or something like that. You can't just do whatever the hell you want, but that is exactly what the Clinton Foundation does. It was created and given tax exempt status to build and curate and operate a presidential library in Little Rock, Arkansas. Nothing more, nothing less. However, it has gone on to create several international aid things, which, might be nice and could be worthwhile. But if you want to have a charity, it's got to be set up legally. And the Clinton Foundation is only granted legal tax exempt authorization to create and run that library. And Charles has been through the litany of things that they have done that make that illegal. And, so that was the hope, was that originally that Eric Braverman, kind of quitting from there and going to the Russian embassy. The idea is that he's going to blow the whistle or something like that. But given that the story came from George Webb and was amplified, it's just probably pure bullshit, and that he's just trying to create some sort of sensational something around the Clinton Foundation so that they can say, oh, look, conspiracy theories on the internet are talking about this and it's all nonsense. And that's basically George's job, to just latch on to big important stories and be the goofball. He's like the cooler at a craps table.
Yeah, he's the guy who shows up and everything just goes to hell. So let's talk about Eric Schmidt and Wendy Schmidt for a minute. So he goes from running the Clinton Foundation to managing Eric Schmidt's money. He's now the...
No, I don't think that's what that thing does. That Schmidt Futures is another one of these weird... See, what they're trying to do that is not the way tax-exempt stuff is intended to work or should work, is that they're trying to create, philanthro capitalism, where you can give tax-exempt money to a thing that's going to invest it in things. But that's not the way charities work. It's you get a tax exemption because some kid doesn't have water and you pay $1 million to make a well and now this kid has water. It's not about, okay, we're going to charge the kid for water and now you made money. That's this called business. So it's unclear. Here's the mission.
I get it. It's just the fact that it's Eric Schmidt and Wendy Schmidt, the term strange bedfellows comes to mind, right? So Eric Schmidt is kind of renowned for having a very strange marriage. You know this, right?
Oh, no, I didn't know that at all.
Oh, yeah. So Eric and Wendy Schmidt are kind of famous for... he has like a gumad and like the whole thing. So they have a very, very strange relationship. And like everybody knows it. Like he goes out with the other woman, and Eric Schmidt is the number one visitor, the person who visited the White House the most during the Clinton presidency.
Yeah. I ran into him on the street one time. He's such a scumbag.
And he also used to work at Sun Microsystems, where
George
used to work. Right.
I didn't know that.
He was at Sun. So before he went to Google, he was at Sun, and George Webb was at Sun. So this is why we're take a look. Just put in Eric Schmidt. Something. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 1983. Well, I don't know how we could figure out. Maybe George has it on LinkedIn.
Well, when did he leave? When did he leave Sun?
I don't know.
He was CEO of Novell.
200 plus.
Remember Novell Networks? Remember Novell Networks?
Yeah. Actually, we should be looking for George Swigert. I don't know. I mean, that's a long shot, but okay, well, here he is. Hang on. Let's see if it says when he was at Sun Microsystems. Ingento, IBM. Keynote, Web Trends, In Focus. They make project. Here we go. 1988 to 1995. Well, it looked like Eric Schmidt got there in 1983 and doesn't talk about him going anywhere until Novell in 1997. Yeah, so it does seem like they might have been at Sun Microsystems at the same time. Pretty good call there, John.
And back then, there weren't that many people there. In other words, you're talking about the same period of time that I was at Oracle, right? Larry Ellison signed my offer letter.
He says he worked primarily with Oracle, George.
Joy, right? So
Sybase, Infomix.
So Sun and Oracle were, you had to do something with the hardware if you're selling Sun computers,
right?
You got to put something on there. So Oracle database really consumed a lot of horsepower, and it was expensive. So, but the fact that they were there at the same time,
that's interesting.
And it wasn't that big a company back then. That's kind of my point, is that if George was there back then, he knows a lot of the same people that I know.
Well, so Braverman is, as far as I know, still some kind of something at Yale. They have him here, and never got to speak to him really.
What is he? What is he? What is he at Yale? Let's take a peek at that.
Lecturer. He's a he's a lawyer.
All right, so lecturer is not even an associate professor, right? Like a lecturer could be, for example, Yale could invite you to come speak about 3D stereoscopic developments in the 20th and 21st century, and speak about it twice a year for a stipend of $98,000. And you'll be speaking in a lecture hall. Yeah, there'll be 800 to 1,200 people in a lecture hall, and you're now a lecturer at Yale speaking about 3D stereoscopic, whatever the hell you're one of the top 10 guys in the world, top 3 probably. So that's a lecturer, is not an associate professor. It's not a full-time thing. It means he shows up and talks in a big room every now and then for a paycheck. That's a nice gig if you can get it.
Yeah, he's also married to this guy, and some people
cute
have questioned if this is a real photo. I think it is, but Neil Brown, he works at KKR, which is like a investment, venture capital thing with David Petraeus.
Look what else it says. Luger Center, Dick Luger.
Oh wow, I did not know that, because when I last looked at this, I didn't know what the Luger Center. Wow, John.
Dude, Luger Center, Tbilisi, Georgia. Let's make some viruses.
But this is the Luger Center. It says it's in Washington. So is that? Yeah. I mean, it's obviously the same thing. Huh?
I'm sure there's no diplomatic pouches that go from point A to point B, right? I'm sure there's none of that.
Right.
From the Luger Center to the Luger
I mean,
Lab.
that's what I'm saying. This is all, all of this stuff, all of these people surround stories that are.
Time out. Who did Dick Luger bring with him to the Ukraine?
Obama.
Barack Obama. So now roll back a second. How do we end up at the Luger Center a second ago? Because Braverman.
Yeah.
Go back, hit your back button. How do we end up here? Because Braverman, we were looking at Braverman and his hubby a second ago.
Yeah.
right? It looks like they just got off the tennis court because they're in their tennis
I had
whites.
him on the New York Times here. Here we go.
There you go. All right, so slow down. So now we just connected these guys, right, with Sun Microsystems, Eric Schmidt, going all the way back with George Webb. Now we got the Lugar Center. Now Dick Lugar and Barack Obama traveled to Ukraine back in 2005. When Barack Obama's a senator. So beautiful, right? So hang on to that. So Barack Obama's a senator. He and Dick Lugar are on a plane on their way to Ukraine, and they get stopped in Siberia.
Right.
Okay, this is a U.S. Air Force plane that they're on, right? So these are two senators flying to Ukraine. The Russians stop them, scare them, make them eat Russian food, torture, and then they let them proceed, right? They let them go on to Ukraine. You want to talk about a web of deception here. This is as interesting as it gets. You got Dick Lugar, Eric Braverman, Eric Schmidt.
Petraeus, that guy works at KKR. The husband works at KKR.
Man. And
or did at the time.
Do me a favor, take a look at KKR's acquisitions. What are KKR's largest acquisitions or largest holdings, if you can find that real quick? Just let's get a sense of what Neil Robert Brown was up to while Eric's making dinner.
This is the website here. It looks like they're into Ukraine based on the color. View our story. I don't know. What do we got here?
What are their biggest holdings, their biggest accomplishments? Can we? Yeah.
I don't think this is going to tell you much of anything because they're going to want to. This is super secret CIA stuff. Look at all their investments. It's a lot of energy investments, I think, with stuff in the Middle East and Houston, Menlo Park. This is all spook stuff. Look at that, 30 Hudson Yards. Yeah. I think I've seen that.
Don't they own Hudson Yards? Don't they own Hudson Yards?
They got a lot of stuff in Hudson Yards.
Type in KKR Holdings. Just Google KKR largest holdings, and let's see. I think they own Hudson Yards.
Kohlberg, Kravis, Roberts, top holdings are Aplevin Corp., Bridge Biopharma, FS KKR Capital, Brightview Holdings, and Property Guru. This is going to be all, deep state stuff. But anyway, Eric Braverman, that was the story. So we went to England, did all that stuff.
All right, now what about the thumb drive?
Assange.
There was a thumb, yeah, right.
Well, that's how I first met Trish. So the thumb drive was how Trish came about. And the London trip was really just shortly after the thumb drive. And I think what was happening in retrospect is that they probably wanted to kind of romantically hook me up with Trish. And then they presumed that, okay, she'll become my girlfriend and she'll be able to tell me what to do and they can control me through her. And that's sort of like their first approach. But I wasn't romantically interested in her. And I don't know, she was sort of marginal as a researcher and a journalist and everything like that. But it was good to have a woman on the show, and she was nice and trying hard and everything, and things were working out well at first. And so George, who I had met through that whole story I told you about, Lee, and we did this first interview, and then I went and met him in Washington, D.C., and we were researching all kinds of stuff about Imran Awan. So Imran Awan is another guy that we should talk about. That was the other big story that George was doing. And so, you got to remember, I was starting out in journalism. I had no idea how to do it. This is as if I was 20 and went to Hollywood and George was making independent movies and was looking for production crew. And so I was just journalism.
The funny thing is, that's what you were to me. So when I met you, I don't know what the hell I was doing, and you're like, all right, now you just get me the stream key and we're going to put the stream key in here and then we'll do the simulcast. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I never did a live stream in my life. So it's funny that as you were starting out, you were looking at him as this guy's he's.
But for journalism, not the technical stuff, because that was the whole idea, is that I had no experience there with journalism, and I figured, okay, this will be a good way to get started. And he had these interesting stories, and he was doing a good job of kind of making this like episodic, serialized thing where people were tuning in and really following the story. And you got to remember, before Imran Awan got arrested, it was like, what is this? Nobody really knew. There was like so few pictures of him available, and the mainstream news wasn't talking about it at all. And so then he got arrested at Dulles Airport. And then...
All right, so well, hang on. Tell everybody who is, why did, so
who is he, right?
Because, so there's people who are listening like, who the hell is this guy?
Right.
So help out, because he plays a huge role in the Hillary emails, WikiLeaks, Bleach Bit thing. So nice and easy, like you're talking to my mom. Who is this guy? How does he, why was George interested in him?
Well, let's talk about who he is according to sort of like Congress and the mainstream news, and then we'll talk about what George said about him. So, he is an individual who is employed as an IT contractor to Congress, working on computers and setting up email and iPads and whatever the different Congress people needed in terms of like an on-staff IT person. They're just Congress people. They don't know anything about computers, so they hire local companies to come in and service the computers or whatever. And I guess they need, whatever kind of clearance, because you're dealing with Congress emails. So they decide to hire a bunch of Pakistani individuals, including Imran Awan, who George said was a Pakistani ISI officer, which is the Pakistani CIA. Okay. And George said that. Separately,
okay, I got you.
Separately, the U.S. Capitol Police did ban him, Imran Awan, that is. Let's find that. They banned him from accessing the IT network. And it was Luke Rosiak who did a lot of the early reporting on this. And I think that George, in many ways, was sort of trying to maybe screw up Luke Rosiak, because, Luke Rosiak hated him, I think probably still does. And he would put out Luke Rosiak's phone number and pressure him and everything. Here's Imran Awan making a very weird hand gesture that a lot of people will notice as he leaves court. And this is when we started getting more photographs of him. Certain people were even doubting if he was a real guy when George was talking about him. But the basic set of allegations from George and the U.S. Capitol Police was that he was hacking the IT network at Congress. And that, that was what got the U.S. Capitol Police to ban him and say he's not allowed to access the IT network. So the thing that's really interesting from a crowdsource standpoint and just from an investigative journalism standpoint, this is pretty unbelievable. So a woman contacted me and she said, hey, my name is Laurel Everly and I saw you on YouTube. I rented the house from this guy that he purchased with the fraudulent bank loan that he's eventually put on trial for bank fraud. And that house was 4809 Sprayer Street. So she sent me a bunch of photos and videos. I was working with Queen Tut at the time, and this woman, Laurel, was going through a divorce, and she and I didn't communicate that well at first. So, Queen Tut sort of acted as an intermediary and did help figure this out. And that was part of the reason, she gained my trust. But we basically discovered Laurel gave us photos and videos from her phone that revealed, so she was getting divorced and she rented this house, and her sons came over to visit her at the house, and they were skateboarding in the basement because it was raining outside. And she just had this video on her phone of her young sons skateboarding in the basement. And I was like, hey, what the hell is that thing plugged in the wall back there? And I took all this shaky video and I noticed that it's got a coaxial cable running to a 3-way splitter. And I said, boy, this sure looks like a cable installation and a cable internet router. And I noticed on the wall that it was running to an RJ45 connector. And Queen Tut called Cox Cable, and sure enough, they said, yeah, there was a high-speed internet account at that house. Laurel Everly said, no, that wasn't my Cox cable internet router. I had Verizon upstairs, never went into the basement except for this one time when my sons came over to the house. So I made this image that shows it, going across the whole room and going out this wall on the right side of the frame. You can see there's a wire coming out of that little black cable box. It's off frame now, but we basically go through it in this video. We say, here it is coming into the wall. This is the cable feed coming in from outside. And it comes down this coaxial cable. Anybody who has cable and cable internet at their house has seen this equipment before. And we basically trace the whole thing, and it goes, to the right side of the room where it hits the cable internet modem, which has an RJ45 connector plugged into the wall. And this wall was adjacent to a garage that Laurel separately told me she had a big fight with Imran over. Now, Imran was a very strange landlord, because I'm sure you've rented houses, John. When I've rented property, you basically either never interface with the landlord, you're dealing with some rental company that you just mail stuff to and maybe meet when you rent the apartment and occasionally if there's a problem. Or perhaps if it's a privately owned home, maybe you will see the landlord every now and then. But this, she said Imran came by 2 to 3 times a week and had the keys and would just come into the house whenever he wanted. She said he hacked her laptop, took the laptop, and she would find it in different places. So here I'm just pointing out the different wires going into the modem, going out of the modem. You see the RJ45 wire right there. So there's something on the other side of this wall that's getting an internet signal, and that is the shed. So Laurel said to Imran, hey, there's a light on in that shed and it's just wasting electricity. I pay the electric bill. I'd like to turn off that light. And Imran said, no, I can't do that because the light is part of a refrigeration unit. I need to keep it cool in there, but I'll, reduce the bill by $25 or whatever he did. And so, what is he doing in the shed that needs to keep cool, that has an internet connection going in there, other than having a server that's running 24/7, warehousing data that he's stealing from Congress? And she also said that one time Imran Awan freaked out when there was a big rainstorm and this basement flooded because he's got all his internet equipment sitting on the floor. So there's a lot of evidence that suggests that Imran Awan was warehousing data in this shed adjacent to the garage at 4809 Sprayer Street.
And he was the owner of the property. The woman
Imran owned it.
That you're communicating with is a tenant.
Renter.
And you're kind of saying, well, if you're renting the house, why does he have a cable modem in the house?
And all this access to the place.
Yeah, most people, when you rent a place, there's not an active cable modem running.
Or the landlord coming every day. This wasn't an Airbnb. This was, she rented the house and was living in the house.
Gotcha. Okay.
The term of a year or whatever it was.
Okay.
So
making sense.
Basically,
makes sense.
And you notice that also Thomas Paine, Michael Moore, was on this video. And at that time, he hadn't revealed to me that he was Michael Moore, hadn't revealed to the public that he was Michael Moore. He was using a fake name. I wouldn't engage with someone doing that now in the way that I was then. At that time, I thought it was mysterious and intriguing and an interesting aspect of I didn't know, I was trying to find the feet of crowdsourced there. Look at how big the logo is in the frame. It's ridiculous. But the point is, I was trying to find my feet with the whole thing. And I thought, okay, this is the way a YouTube, news show, mystery kind of solving crowdsourced mysteries show should go. And that was a mistake, because I don't really know what either of these people's purpose was in interacting with me, but I don't think it was in my best interest. And so basically immediately after we published this video revealing the hidden network topology at 4809 Sprayer Street, which was hidden in the garage, a shed off the garage that Laurel had no access to, that was locked with a padlock, and Imran went to regularly. So when we published this, George Webb went over to, because he was living in D.C. or staying close to D.C. or something, he went over to 4809 Sprayer Street in Alexandria, Virginia, or wherever it is, and he made a video showing the backyard shed. And he's like, oh, well, there's the shed. It's like, that's not the shed. Why are you trying to show contradictory evidence to blunt. I mean, you were smiling when I was talking to you about that evidence because it's so rock solid. It's basically proof that the guy had something going on in the shed that he didn't want her to know about. He's accused by the U.S. Capitol Police of stealing data from Congress, and now he's freaking out when something is screwing with the data. It's incredibly compelling evidence that there was something important in the shed. I told Judge Tanya Chutkin in the hallway of the Pettyman courthouse, I said, Imran Awan is stealing Congress data, and he's got an illicit shed in the house an illicit server at the house that he bought with this loan. And she looked at me and she said, I can't discuss this with you. I was like, oh.
Just listen. All right, now, question though. Last episode, you told us that at one point you said to George, why don't you come and stay with me and we can work on these things together? That had not yet happened, or was he?
That had happened. And so, let's see, this thing was originally this is September 13th. So George, I first met George in maybe May. When was that? Let's go look and see when that first video was. Because also that first video, I guess, was edited. So it was published. Because I didn't.
What I'm getting at is, if he's living with you and he goes to Alexandria,
he was a guest
Virginia,
staying with me. He wasn't living with me. So here's the thing: this thing was. I didn't say when it was originally published. As I recall, I started interacting with George in April or May, and the invitation for him to be a guest in this apartment while we worked on videos together, that would have been around late May, early June. The Port of Charleston thing was June 14th, and certainly by August, I believe I had told him to GTFO. So this video of him revealing the shed, that was April 13th. So that would have been, weeks after I realized that he was an alcoholic and a social engineer and a maniac trying to do bad things to me. So when I observed him doing that, going to 4809 Sprayer Street and showing the wrong shed, I interpreted that.
Do you have that? Can you show that to the people?
That was a George video, so I don't have that posted. I do have it in the evidence archive, but it would take a little while to locate it. But the point is, when I saw that, I had already kicked him out and suspected him, so I interpreted that as him deliberately injecting contradictory evidence to throw people off from what we were finding, and I was suspecting him of being a social engineer and a liar. But remember, he was very popular on YouTube at that point, and there were a lot of people who felt that I had just sort of ridden his coattails to, whatever.
All right, I got a great idea for fun. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's go to Google Earth. Let's go take a look at 4809 Sprayer Street. I want to show everybody the sheds.
That's a good idea. I don't know if I've ever done that, or maybe I have, but not in a long time.
And we'll wrap up on that. So this is fascinating. So now it's starting to make some sense, right? Now it's all coming together. And the fact that you get this close to something that Congress is sniffing around.
Whoa. Right, so, hey, wait a minute. Look at that. You don't have 3D over here. That's what they do in sensitive sites. Why is that?
All right. See how far away you have to go to get 3D. See if you have to go a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles.
Ooh, is that Imran right there?
Is it?
They've changed it. You can't zoom in by pinching whatever.
That's not bad.
It's somebody.
Somebody.
Oh, no, actually, somebody Middle Eastern bought the house from him, so that might be the new owner.
All right. Well, I see a shed behind the carport. So let's talk about sheds.
I think
so. There's the carport, and behind the carport is
this is not 4809. I don't think that's not it. Hang on a second.
Show us the right house then. You show me.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
You were there.
I wasn't.
You
there.
went there. Oh, George went there.
Yeah.
You just looked at photographs from the basement. George goes there and said, all right, well, then this is helpful.
I think that might be it.
All right, well, then let's go. Well, type, it says 40, up in the upper left, it says 4810.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the wrong house. Looking at the wrong shed. If we're looking at the wrong shed, we're looking at the wrong house.
No, that is it. 4809 Street. That says 4810, but I don't know.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
So go across the street. Go across the street. Turn around 180 degrees.
No, that definitely isn't it. This must be it. The across the street house, I just do not think is it. But you got to also remember, this is all 6 years ago. Stuff could have changed. What? Maybe that is it. There is a shed.
Hang on. Just to be sure, let's consult the experts. Go to Zillow. Zillow will tell you how much it rents for, how much it's sold for, and they don't screw around with addresses like Google does.
Right.
Zillow. Yeah, there you go. Let's go rent the house or buy the house from whoever owns it. We can see the last transactions. We can see how much it sold for. How much fun is this? Did you get the address right? It looks like a typo where I'm sitting.
I think it's right. Yeah, that's it. 525 grand.
4-bedroom, 2-bath.
Well, Hina Alvey, I think, was the owner because that was his wife. And she was also involved in the trial. There was all kinds of screwy stuff going on with his wife and his, somebody else Awan and all kinds of Awan brothers. And they were all working at Congress. But that was the shed that we saw in the Google Earth picture. And then George showed some shed in the back.
Let's go back to Google Earth. Go back to Google Earth. Go back to Google Earth. Now that we know it's the house. Now we know we're on the right house. So now we know. Now we can go looking at it from space and look in the backyard.
So let's see where we get to 3D here.
Yeah, that's also interesting.
That is interesting. So this is like Spy neighborhood.
Yeah. So go like 2 miles away. See if it's 3D. And you sure you have 3D layers turned on?
I'm saying they're not making photogrammetric buildings like they normally do.
You may have to turn the layers on.
No, you don't, because these houses are 3D. See?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Dude, look at this. This is a big deal.
Why have they turned off photogrammetry for this neighborhood?
Guess
is this
why?
a CIA neighborhood? Yeah, they don't want you to have details about it. For whatever reason.
Welcome to Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome to Alexandria.
So for people who are confused about what I'm talking about right now, let me make sure everybody understands. You can see as I move the perspective on Google Earth, the trees on the right side of the frame are, represented three-dimensionally, but these buildings right in front of the trees, it's just a flat picture of them. And as we move around, the perspective doesn't change. These little houses down here, we can zoom in and they look 3D, but the houses across the street are just flat pictures of houses.
So, for those of you who are accusing us of talking in code all the time, people like, it's really hard to figure out what you're saying because, you make stuff so hard to understand. So, really? If the entire neighborhood is flat, this is sort of like Google's way of telling you, and the CIA owns all this over here.
I think it might be something like that.
Yeah, not the houses, not the houses.
Because look, this part's 3D.
Right.
See?
But look across the street. All that commercial property all of a sudden becomes, well, guess what? Knock, knock. Who's there? So now let's go. All right. So let's go back to Imran's house, which isn't far away. How odd is that?
He's in still 2D zone.
He's in the 2D neighborhood. So back to Imran's house. He's still 2D.
Yeah. 4809 Sprayer Street. And so
George goes in the backyard and there's some kind of shed.
Is the shed that George showed in the backyard, way in the backyard.
I don't even think that's his property. That's not Imran's property. It is? Yeah.
Here, let's
spin it.
It is. It's inside the fence there. Let's see if we can zoom in a bit. It doesn't work. I like the old way that it worked better.
Give me some pinch.
There, you see, that's the shed.
That's what George shows everybody? Yes. So that's what he shows. And he says, no, there's nothing in there. That's it.
That's the shed that he showed. No, because he didn't say there's nothing in there. He just said, here's the shed. He just said, here's the shed, so that somebody who watches my evidence will say, well, Jason must be wrong, because how could there be a server in that shed if there's a internet router over here near the garage?
And we just saw the shed in the carport. That's a significant sized thing. Right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the carport to show everybody the carport.
Zoom out here.
And just go up the street a tiny bit. There we go.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
there's the shed right there in the carport.
My understanding is it's that
carport.
thing. We can't see it that well with all these cars parked in front. It's behind there.
Pinch and zoom. Yeah.
It doesn't do that anymore. I'm annoyed that it won't.
No, that's
but that's
great.
it right there.
You got it. Look, dude, that's clear as day. That's not an RV, right? That car. That's not a truck. That's not a trailer.
No, that's part
a
of
shed.
it. That's a kind of a part of the house, but it's disconnected from the rest of the house. So, somehow he must have had coming out of that thing in the basement. There's a line running. There's a network cable running somewhere here to this shed.
So there's lights on in there. It's locked. He shows up every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
She's not allowed
Probably
in
with
there.
a thumb drive or whatever.
She's not allowed to go near it with to go keep her rakes and her brooms in there. She's not allowed that. And there's a light on, and he's visiting every couple of days. Well, it sounds normal.
And George wants you to think it's the other shed. I mean, what the hell's the point of even going there to show the other shed? It's just an obvious, deflection.
Well, especially if he was staying with you in New York, and now
No. He was done.
No?
But this is so. Remember, this is September. I kicked him out August. He only stayed here 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you, man.
And when I kicked him out, it was like, you know what? I figured out you're a son of a bitch. Get the hell out of here and don't let me see you again. So when he's doing this, I know, and he knows I know that he's trying to thwart me.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Not animosity. It's that I am on to him and his mission is to stop me. That's the thing I want people to understand. This is not George and I were buddies and we had some falling out in our business relationship or our friendship or something like that. This is a team of people who appear to be coordinated by whatever it is that's creating the Disinformation Governance Board and all these things that the Attorney General of Missouri and other people are suing, the Joe Biden administration to prevent them from censoring the internet and stopping people from saying certain things. So remember, let's just back up. Why do George and his brother, according to me, why would they want to do all of this? What is it about Jason that they care about? Well, it just so happens that I believe I happened to come along at the moment that they were looking to launch this plan to create a groundswell of public opinion that we need to censor the internet, that people having the ability to just use free speech and publish whatever they want on the internet, maybe that was fine before we had social media, but the founders of the Constitution couldn't have anticipated Twitter, so now we need to change everyone's gender and presume that we know to do about freedom of speech, and you can't have it. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. What I'm pointing to is, I believe they wanted to use me as a patsy, as a fall guy for the incidents in the port of Charleston and to get me arrested by the FBI and put on a big public trial down here at the Southern District of New York. They'd got all kinds of embarrassing pictures of me looking distraught, coming out of there, going back to the jail, contemplating how the next 15 to 20 years of my life would be miserable. And then they'd say, see, we can't have people like Jason making their own shows on YouTube. We need licenses for journalists. We need services from the government that approve what is news and what is disinformation. And we need to clamp down the internet. And in 2017, John, the notion that saying, I think there was fraud in a particular election could get your YouTube channel terminated or your monetization terminated or have some sort of impact on your life was so distant from people's minds that now hearing that they were trying to cancel me on the internet doesn't really sound like that big a deal. But you got to put yourself back into that time frame. These guys were launching this idea. And Robert David Steele was saying in that time frame, and even on my show, that he thought that Trump should create his own Twitter and that instead of tweets, he could have trumpets. And this is Truth Social, by the way.
Right.
Who's the lawyer for Devin Nunes, who's the CEO of Truth Social? It's Stephen Biss. I think Truth Social is still part of an operation to stay on Trump and stay close to Trump. This is what they do. Like, they wanted George to be my friend, but just stay close to me so he could mess me up.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about Robert David Steele and how he gets into the picture here in this web of deception. But we've been running about an hour, and I think this is where it hits the highway. So when George Webb goes to Imran Awan's house to film a Rubbermaid box in the back and claim that this is the shed that Jason was talking about, rather than what's obviously the shed that Jason was talking about, this is disinformation, and this is disinformation being used to manage a counter narrative. In other words, what the type of journalism we do is breaking up the real narrative, proposing a counter narrative. And it appears that this team of people, they need to own this counter narrative, not crowdsource the truth, not Jason Goodman. And when you it appears that the reporting and the things that you were noticing, you hit a nerve. And it's almost like your reporting on the Imran Awan seems to be what took them to this next level. And so maybe that's what you mean by Super Mario Brothers and leveling up. And we'll talk about that.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that in the next episode. But I think this has been fascinating. I can't thank you enough for helping everybody understand this incredibly complex backstory. And to me, the Imran Awan piece and the piece that we just went through with Eric Braverman and connecting with Eric Schmidt from Google and this is fascinating stuff. I can't thank you enough. So next episode, we're going to keep going and take it to this next level. What happens next after George tells everybody the Rubbermaid box is the shed? Then what happens? And we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at Robert David Steele. How does he get into the picture? How did Thomas Paine come into the picture? Because you mentioned, Michael Moore, Thomas Paine. Yeah. How did he show up? Did you guys bump into him on a corner? So we'll get to that.
No, George brought him in. Because remember, he said the Eric Braverman story came from True Pundit. So George I was like, oh, True Pundit, that must be a big deal. And then, now we're meeting Mike Moore. It was all set up. It was set up. And I think that Mike Moore, we'll talk about Mike Moore in a future episode, but I appreciate your interest in this, John. I appreciate viewers and listeners' interest, and thanks for having me on.
For those of you who really want to get into the inner workings of all this, please take a look at Jason's channels on patreon.com, crowdsource the truth. And you can go to subscribestar.com, crowdsource the truth. You can go to substack.com, crowdsource the truth. And you can go to Odyssey. And is it Jason Goodman or crowdsource the truth?
Odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. And again, for people who want to go back and look at the historical videos, Odyssey is the best way to do it. The content tab, and just sort everything by oldest first, and you'll be looking at all of these relevant videos first.
This is fascinating stuff. It appears that you kicked the hornet's nest, and now we get to smoke them out. So this is fun stuff. I'm loving it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you'll join us on our next episode of Web of Deception. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining.
It's one small step for man.
What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion, yeah. I feel like an astronaut in the ocean, yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion, yeah. I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. She says that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G.O.D. Don't believe in T.H.O.D. She keep playing me down. I'ma play her for fun. You don't really know my mental. Let me give you the picture like stencil. Falling down in the drought. No flow rain was pouring down. See that pain was all around. See my mom was kinda loud. Didn't know which way to turn. Flow was cool, but I still felt burned. Energy up, you can feel my surge. I'ma kill everything like this.